Welcome back, everybody. My name is Christopher. I'm the theFitDirector, and today is a new episode of Watch Like a Filmmaker. And as you know, we are creating a 3-part series right now talking about editing. Now, I don't want to spend too much time reviewing what we talked about in the last episode, so let me get a little help from a friend.
The wonderful world of editing. Now, editing has been known as the invisible art since its inception for many reasons, but mainly because if done right, it goes unnoticed to the casual viewer. Well, not always the truth. Because you see it happen in all of the content that you're watching, whether it's something on your phone, something on the big screen in the movie theaters, or even something right there in your own living room. Editing is everywhere. And whether you know you can see it or not, it's prevalent. Now, editing is more than just the art form behind the scenes. It's a method of storytelling. It's a piece of the puzzle that when created together with everything else involved makes the wonderful picture that you're enjoying. And furthermore, hey, hello? I'm up here. Hello? Can we get back to the video, please? Yes, all that is interesting and good. Yes, that is the meat and bones of editing. Come on. Can I just finish this intro, please? Thank you. Anyway, when I talk about editing and the invisible art form, there's a lot of things that go into place before the editing process starts. Now, I won't go into all the details, but we can't leave out an important aspect of editing that everyone understands as a part of the production process that can't be missed, and that is continuity.
Continuity, just like editing, is another part of the invisible art. Now, continuity, when done right, is exceptionally unnoticed. That's why I figured we'd talk about it in this episode. Because you don't think about it, but over the course of shooting or filming a project, or some of your favorite content, time can pass. And with that in mind, a couple things happen. Hair can grow. Wardrobes can get messed up or scuffed. And there's a lot of other things. But before I get into all that, what is continuity? Let me explain. Continuity is the principle of making sure that all the details in a film or television or content are consistent from shot to shot and from scene to scene. If a scene upholds the standards of continuity, each shot feels as though it seamlessly flows from the previous shot, reinforcing a sense of realism in the story. So like I just mentioned, continuity adds a sense of realism to a project. Now, it's not uncommon on a project over a span of time, let's say an independent project or a larger commercial project, for scheduling and a few other things to make a seamless transition from one scene to the next a little bit difficult. But let me explain and break it down a little bit. Let's say you have a film that takes place over the course of a week, a short film that you're doing over the course of a week. And let's say there's a couple scenes that happen in the day and a couple scenes that happen at night. And to make it a little bit more complicated, this film shot over a span of a week. The entire story is told in a single day. But why would it be a little difficult? Well, keep in mind, if you're actually shooting a scene in the course of a day, and you start in, let's say, the morning, move to the afternoon, and then end up in the night, you're going to have scenes that need to be shot at this certain time of day to get the certain light. Now, the director of photography, the cinematography, and everybody else involved can make some of those lighting tricks happen. But wardrobe has to be on point. Because if one of your characters has a white t-shirt that happens to get dirty over the course of a week, well, you better make sure you have additional shirts, or that stain, if it happens in the story or the script, remains there for the rest of the shoot. And that can be a little bit tricky. And there's a lot of different people that make this continuity happen. But one person is called the script supervisor, which I'll break down when we go over the cast and crew in another episode, because I can't wait to break down the credits of a film to really explain the parts and roles of everyone involved. But to make this a little easier for me to explain, allow me to use those terms. A script supervisor or continuity department will monitor that white t-shirt and where the stain happens in the course of the film. Or, even crazier, imagine a character gets wounded early in the day. And over that course of the week, you are shooting day, night, afternoon at different times and whenever the schedule allows it. But you need to heal that wound. So paying attention to that script in the continuity department and script supervisor is going to be watching for those different parts in the scene. If on page 5 they get a cut on their right arm, you gotta make sure that on page 26 they have the same cut on the right arm. Now, because of scheduling though, you may see a character walk into a room, but we don't realize that that room, between walking into that room and what's actually going on in the room, was filmed maybe 2 months apart, a week apart. But what does this all mean to editing? Well, imagine this, even if you've never done any editing before, professionally or otherwise. An editor is going to receive a massive file filled with different shots that make up the completed longer format content, like a film, television show, or even certain YouTube videos. And when that editor is assembling the shots, let's say they're editing a very pivotal scene, which would show up in page, let's say 67 of the script, and the main character has to grab that right arm and hold the wound. Well, guess what? If there's no wound there, the editor is going to have to get a little more creative and maybe create more work. Or navigate around other shots to where you see the character holding the arm but don't really get a close-up on the wound. It makes things a little bit difficult. And that's just for one wound. Imagine some of the most epic fight scenes and giant crashes and all these other things where you see characters get beat up, bruised, attacked, wounded. Okay, there's multiple scratches, cuts, and you can kind of get lost on it. But if it's a pivotal part of the story, you better make sure that continuity department or script supervisor kept everybody in check. Now, it's not just up to the continuity department to keep track of everything, especially when you have your teams with makeup, wardrobe, hairstylists, and all those together to help with the process. But in the end, when continuity falls apart, you'll start to notice, especially when it's written in as a pivotal story moment in the script. Wow, okay, that is a lot of information to take in this episode, especially since I'm jumping all over the place. But for now, let's cover 3 different important facts that we've covered so far so that we can kind of stay on track for the next part of this episode. 1, editing is an invisible art, because especially when done correctly, it goes unnoticed. And continuity is a close second in assistance to that process, because continuity grounds us in the realism of it and kind of puts us in a place and time in the story. Number 2, the continuity department is going to have to work with other departments during the production to create that realism that we're all expecting. Because continuity is going to be working within the script to make sure that pivotal moments happen as they should. So for example, you're going to be working with your special effects makeup department when you talk about those cuts or wounds, or bruises even, that a character has received in a previous fight and now has to nurse over the next scene. Or you'll be working with a wardrobe department when a character maybe gets attacked and their shirt is ripped. You better make sure that rip is consistent or you start to mess around. Believe me, you would notice if a rip starts right here on a shirt and then moves here and then all of a sudden is right here and you don't understand why, especially when nothing was shown on camera. A rip that bounces around will become distracting and doesn't really serve the story, and you know how I feel about serving the story here at Watch Like a Filmmaker. And third, the editing process is going to be that much easier for the editor when they have more shots to work with. I would much rather have the wide range of shots that was covered during production to use to kind of create that story and help find the different angles that work best to serve the moment that we're actually filming, or the dialogue, or the scene. It doesn't matter. I want more footage. The more footage, the better, and I can trim from that. So what would happen if continuity wasn't a part of the production process in our favorite content? What would happen next? Let's talk about that. Now, we've all seen it shared across our favorite platforms when continuity errors happen in our favorite content. Things like objects suddenly going missing from the scene between shots. Now, I know you've all noticed, just like me, when a glass of water is full, or half full, or not full, or half full, all in the course of one conversation. Yeah, that's a continuity error. Now, objects missing in a scene between shots, or liquids missing between a cup or a drink, is just one part of it. An actor's hair or makeup changing between the shots in the same conversation can also be considered continuity errors. Or maybe even pieces of film equipment appearing in a shot, or maybe it's not film equipment. Maybe it's a Starbucks cup appearing on set in an episode. So I bet you're saying to yourself, if he knows this much about continuity and editing, I'm guessing none of this ever happens to his projects, right? You could be further from the truth. Sometimes it can't be avoided where some errors or some issues have to be worked around in a creative way, or you just kind of have to accept that what you have is what you have. And I'm not above that. Let me show you a scene real quick. And be gentle. I love the project, but this glaring continuity error is a great example to show you. Now, to catch you up real quick, throughout this entire story, the main character has been searching for a dear friend. And at this point, we are seeing the dear friend has been found in isolation. The friend was actually a captive of the enemy. Battered and broken, the main character lifts up his friend and finally rescues him. This triumphant and victorious moment captured. And wow, was it a blast to make happen. But in this next scene, which follows the story, you're going to see the main character is working with the same friend, except this time, and you probably already see it, the hair is longer. Yeah. So Couldn't avoid it, but there it is. Now, I'm not talking down about the project. It was fun to make and I was glad I got to be a part of it. But at the same time, that's a very glaring continuity error. And it came down to scheduling. Not only because we shot out of sequence, which basically out of order, so we shot middle parts when we had the location for them, or end parts, and just shot all over based on the location we had at the time. But when you're shooting out of order, errors can occur. For example, the location where he's being rescuing their friend was shot months later, and the actor at the time had already cut his hair. So, is there anything that could have been done about this? Yes. I think in hindsight, if the character had a wig, we could have kept that as an option. There are workarounds for different things, but I bet you're still wondering how continuity errors can happen on such a large scale, even if it's not regarding location or scheduling, because sometimes that can happen. And truthfully, because continuity, although it assists in the editing process, isn't always the main part of the story or the director's vision. For example, if I'm showing two actors across the table talking to each other as they're drinking a glass of wine or a glass of water, whether or not the glass of water is half full or full, if the point of the scene isn't to show that the characters are getting drunk, is kind of irrelevant. It gives them an action, it kind of shows that they're in a place, maybe their own living room or dining room, doing something, but other than that, the dialogue and what the actors are giving as a performance kind of takes the forefront to the glass of water that's filling slowly or unfilling. Of course, you're not purposely ignoring those facts, but the main part of the story is the actor's conversation and not the glasses of water. So that's one example where continuity errors can happen. And if you're thinking about a reshoot, best believe that getting an actor back just because a glass of water or two glasses of water are half full or full, it's not really worth anyone's time, especially paid professionals. You got the shot. You don't need a reshoot just to make sure water is filled up. Again, that is in difference to if you're shooting a scene where actors are drinking to get drunk and the end goal of the scene is for them to be drunk. But that's the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining me as we talk about continuity and editing. Like I said, this is part of a 3-part series where we talked about editing and intro in the first one. Today we talked about continuity correctly, and its errors, and then the third one I'm leaving as a surprise for next week where we go into something special that I can't wait to share with all of you. But as a bonus for everyone who's watched this far, did you notice at one point my top button became button? Maybe. Wow. Good job for those of you who did. Good job for anyone who just watched this far, honestly. Thank you so much for that. But that was a little bit easier. Did you notice as well that my sleeve became unbuttoned? That's not something I did right now. Go back and watch at some point in the video. Well, if you did notice my top button undone and my sleeve undone as well, you might be ready for a job in the continuity department in some of your favorite content. My name is Christopher, I'm the theFitDirector, and this has been another episode of Watch Like a Filmmaker. And I'll see you next week as we continue the end of our 3-part editing series with something special that I can't wait to share with all of you. Alright guys, thank you. Bye.